have a lot going on in the world, right? There's some good, some not so good. We're seeing this conflict going on in Israel, and please continue to pray for Israel. And I don't know if it's on Chris's computer or not, but we even have a thing up there with the Israeli flag, and we stand with Israel. God tells us in His Word that He will bless those that bless Israel, and He will curse those that curse Israel. And if you look all through the history of Israel, those that have cursed Israel have been cursed. Most of those nations and most of those peoples, from especially Old Testament back, they don't even exist anymore. But I also believe that one of the reasons that not only because this is one of the two nations, us and Israel, that have been founded upon God, we have been a nation that has stood with Israel. And I just always continue to pray also that our leadership and that our nation continues to stand with Israel. It's very important for this nation. And so continue to pray for that. And so I want to talk about that today because what happens with this, how many of you know there is so much, both sides of the aisle, this isn't a right-left thing, but through media there is so much propaganda and so much narrative building because it wants to shape things and go and take people in a certain way. Most of you have seen the horrific pictures and the video, whether through YouTube or maybe a Facebook or Instagram or TikTok and things of that nature, of how horrific this invasion was from Hamas, from the Palestinian side of things, into Israel. It is something that is bigger and the worst attack that they have faced and death in a single day since the Holocaust. On a per capita, the death toll, I think, is around 1,300 now, roughly in that. I mean, they've had thousands injured and things, but per capita wise, because they're such a small nation, I think over in Israel anyway, there's about 9 million. But comparing that to United States, their death toll to equal out per capita with our population would be about not 1,300 deaths, about 36,000 deaths. So imagine being attacked by a nation, by a group. This isn't even a nation attacking them, but by a terrorist group. And everybody remembers 9/11? Remember how horrific 3,000 people were losing their lives. Now take that times 12. Imagine 36,000 people being killed. How would you feel? How would you respond? Any nation has a right to defend itself. Any nation has a right to defend its borders. No nation should have to deal with terrorist attacks from any group or attacks from any nation and to have their hands tied because of politics. So today I want to look at, because of all these narratives you're going to see, and I would never want, because what propaganda does and what the narrative does and what media does is they want to pull on your heartstrings. Because no one likes to see death, whether it's for the Israelis or whether it's for the Pakistanis. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody loves to see a father carrying their 7-year-old child and they're dead because of war. There's a reason they say war is hell. And war is hell on both sides. We don't celebrate death. However, many years ago I did a sermon. It was called "Be Careful of Your Decisions Because They Affect Many." And that's exactly what Hamas has done. They are the ruling class, the ruling party that have been chosen by the Palestinians. I think a minute ago I said Pakistanis or something. Palestinians. They've chosen them to lead them governmentally. And they're a terrorist organization. There's no two ways about it. You get sympathizers look all across America, and you've seen from New York from the East Coast to the West Coast, and you've seen all these ones from colleges, the higher education, and all this standing for the Palestinians. I have no respect for those individuals. Because that means you're standing in agreement with a group of individuals that came across sovereign borders and attacked individuals and peoples, not just military individuals, but all of you have heard the headlines where they found 40 babies beheaded. They found other babies burned in their beds. I remember seeing this one video of this young Israeli woman. They pull her out of the back of a Jeep, and they're bringing her around and putting her in the other side. They're just moving her around, whatever. They've taken hostages. Do you know that the last number I heard was 27 Americans have been killed? And they don't know how many are hostages. My opinion, our government shouldn't just stand idle by. Those are our people. You fight for our people just like they should fight for theirs. You stand up and you stand against evil. And I'm going to show you today through all of this. This is evil. This is a good and evil battle. It is all framed around this idea of about occupied territory, and it's garbage. It isn't true. The media paints Israel, and you see it as I was talking a minute ago about the protests in the streets and everything from all the different ones that are supporters of the Palestinians and everything in that movement. That means that you approve of all of these heinous acts and this death and destruction that they're bringing to Israel. It says that you're okay with that. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not okay with that. We have to stand on the side of God. You realize I just said it wasn't a matter of we have to stand on the side of Israel. We have to stand on the side of God and what God calls us to and what God requires of us. This conflict, though complex, is very simple. You have one side and one group of people that want to utterly destroy and wipe out and not leave one Jew alive on this planet. They don't want them to have a nation, they don't want them to be in the Middle East, and they do not want them to have life. Folks, if somebody goes out here and goes into a community and would behead one child, would rape one woman in the home, and then shoot the father and kill them, you would be outraged. Those very ones that are supporting Hamas and supporting the Palestinians will be totally against that if it happened here. But because one of the things that the Palestinians, the Hamases, the PLOs, and all that through the years and through the years, what they've been able to do is work the media to their advantage and pull on the heartstrings of people. Because, folks, I'm telling you, my heart goes out to those families that are losing lives in the Palestinian area just as much as it does the Israelis. There's a difference between the two. This is why you hear over and over where they're calling the Hamas and them animals. Because when you specifically go across a border and you search out children, you search out women, you search out, just killing elderly and Holocaust survivors, you are flat out evil. No two ways about it. It's straight out of the pit of hell. What I was going to mention a moment ago, and I got off on another thing, was seeing that young Israeli woman, and she's being brought into this Jeep. And it broke my heart. I mean, no one knows what's happened to her. But it broke my heart because she has on these gray sweatpants. I mean, a dark shirt. I mean, the image is there. Most of them, they got the dark hair and everything. I can remember her face and the fear on her face as they were pulling her out of this Jeep. And then as she turns to go on the other, I see the whole backside of her pants soiled with blood because they were raping the women in the streets. That's animals. Those are savages. Those are people that, how an individual can support that is beyond me. My brain cannot get around it. My brain does not think like that. I don't care. This has nothing to do with occupation. This has nothing to do with a land dispute. This has nothing to do with two separate states, and I'll prove it to you today. This is all a religious war. This is a religious war between good and evil. Everybody, as I said, has a right to defend themselves and a nation. Now, in Arab, the Arab and Hebrew dialect is similar and close. Now, Hamas is an acronym. I'm not going to butcher it. I can't say it how it's supposed to be, but Hamas stands for something. But basically, it's the Islamic Resistance Movement, is what in our English we call that. Okay? Have you ever wondered if Hamas is in the Bible? Well, it is. You see, in the Hebrew, Hamas means violence. I'm going to share you two scriptures. They're scripture after scripture. Let me give you one, Genesis 6:11. It says, the earth also was corrupt before God. This is the time of Noah. And the earth was filled with violence. That word for violence is Hamas. It means violence, unjust, damage, false, injustice, oppressor, unrighteous, violent. That's what Hamas means in the Hebrew. Kind of coincidence? Don't think so. Let me give you another one. Psalms 27:12. Deliver me not over into the will of my enemies, for false witnesses are risen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. Same word there, cruelty. Hamas in the Hebrew. That is exactly who these people are. Unrighteous, unjust, violent terrorists. Call it what it is. Many of these very groups, I see I can't remember, is it, I'm forgetting her name. Is it Rashid Tlaib? What's the congresswoman? One of them, she's from she's Palestinian, supports them. Over her office there at Congress is an LGBTQ flag and a Palestinian flag. You know the irony of that and the craziness of that? Do you know what Hamas would do if you were gay or LGBTQ in the community? They'd put a bullet in your head, or they'd take you to some high building, they'd throw you off of it. They'd kill you. Some of the very people that are supporting this don't even realize they would kill you in a heartbeat. No two ways about it. There would be no, well, let's think of their feelings. Let's make sure that they're, we don't want to offend them. No, they just flat kill you. A moment ago, I mentioned about how this whole thing about Palestine, the Palestinian area being an occupied territory, this Gaza, you always hear of Gaza, the Gaza Strip. And this whole, I'm going to give you a little bit of history here, okay? Because I want you to understand, next week, I'm going to still be in this next week, but then we got to get into the what do we do? What do we need to do? And because this is all about end times stuff. You ask, Darren, why are you talking about this stuff? Because this is related to end time prophecy. This is all, I'm not saying that next week Jesus is coming back. We don't know when exactly that is. But what I'm telling you is this is all putting everything and lining everything up in the trajectory for that to happen. This is why it's important to realize where we are in time. If you don't know what time it is, you're going to fall asleep at the wheel. You're going to continue to live your life the way we live our lives in this nation. As we've been talking about closet Christians, not living for God, we're more worried about the world. You know how many people are sitting at home today? Well, I should have went to church, but I was tired. I worked a little bit long this week, so I'd just rather stay home. I don't need the fellowship. I don't need to come together. And then all hell's breaking loose in their families, and they can't understand why. It's not because they didn't go to church, but because everything else is more important to them of the world than God. That's what it's illustrating. So I'm going to give you a little bit of some history today so you understand that this stuff that you're hearing in the media and this occupied territory and how bad Israel is and all these things, it's just feeding you a narrative, folks. It wants you. Satan wants you to be against God's people. Satan wants you to be against the nation of Israel. That is his plan. So let me give you a little bit of history on how all this Palestine come about. Back after World War I, Britain took control of this whole area in the Middle East through there. The Ottoman Empire is what controlled it. Okay? And through World War I, they end up taking this over. And they ended up, I think it's around 1914 when all this happens, and then the 15, 16, by the time 18 gets around, there's this conflict between the Jews and conflict between what becomes the Palestinians. But there's conflict there because they are both in the same area and everybody's wanting their own thing. And one of the things that got everything riled, if you go back and you look at history, is because Great Britain played both sides of the fence with the Jewish people and with the Arab nation. They played both sides of the fence because they needed them to help them fight in the war. And so when they got that, it ended up there was just a little bit more favor towards the Jewish nation, okay, which makes the Arab nation mad. And so there's this conflict. And so then that all comes along. But in 1936, there's Lord Peel. Lord Peel ends up with this commission. And what he decides is that this is the way we're going to solve this. Folks, this is 1936. What do we need? We need a two-state solution. So you thought that was all new. They were talking about it then. He's like, we need a two-state solution. They offered to the Arab world and to the Jewish nation, well, it wasn't a nation, so to speak, but the Jewish people, in this two-state solution, they offered 80% of all. Actually, Chris, if you would bring up, Josh, if I could get the lights over there, bring up the one for the 1937. It's labeled. You see all of the. I've got it on mine. I can see it better. Boop, boop, boop. Give me just a second. You see all of that purplish color? All of that was given to what would become the Palestinians. That's what they wanted to give. 80% of the land was given to the Palestinians. 20% of the land was given to the Jewish people. Even with that little bit of land, the Jewish nation signed on, said, hey, we're just happy to be able to have something that we're going to be able to call ours. We're coming back to the land. And then I'm going to show you something that's going to blow your mind in a little bit too. And so they wanted to come back. They're like, okay, that's fine. Give them 80% of the land. Palestinian, what becomes Palestinian, the Arab nations, they said no. Wasn't enough. That's the first time they denied it. So they were offered in 1937 80% of the land. Not the Gaza Strip, 80% of the entire land. Then in 1947, the British, because they didn't get it, they had skirmishes, they still had problems, the British asked the newly formed UN to go in, and this is going to be the map for 1947, Chris. They asked them to go in and create another idea of what do you assess and think that we need to do. Guess what their assessment was? You need a two-state solution. Give them an Arab nation and the Jewish people theirs. Another two-state solution offered to them. Okay? Once again, the Jewish people agreed, okay. All right. They were actually offered, the Jewish people were offered even less land. But they said, okay, we'll do it. Once again, what becomes the Palestinians said no, wasn't good enough. And what did they do? They launched war against the Jewish nation. And then in 1948, Israel becomes a state. Israel becomes their own nation. They have this war against Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Iraq. I don't know how well, you really can't see that very well. You can always pull up a map somewhere. But all of these nations came against them, and Israel, by the hand of God, defeats them. This was a newly formed nation, didn't have a crazy army like you take the U.S., and still defeated all of the Arab nations because of the hand of God. So that was the second time they were offered this land, more than the Gaza Strip. This is the second time they were offered it, the second time they declined it. Then in 1967, there was this thing called the Six-Day War, where Egypt and Syria and Jordan, Transjordan, where they all attack Israel. In 1967, and in 6 days, Israel defeats them by the hand of God once again. And when they did, Israel took back what we call the West Bank. You've heard the term the West Bank. And they take back the West Bank. The West Bank is Judea and Samaria. That's the two areas. That's kind of, you can kind of see a little yellow dot up there. That's Jerusalem, but right there above that, a little bit above that, not the whole area, but a little bit above that, that's called the West Bank. That's what they take back, okay? And with that, there was another chance right there for them to create another two-state system. Before they done all this, they attack them. But this is when the famous 3 no's were given by the Palestinians. Actually, around 1950, 1960s, when they took on the name Palestinian. Okay? The term Palestine, or I'll get to that later with Gaza. But they said, no peace with Israel. These was their terms. No peace with Israel, no recognition for Israel, and no negotiations with Israel. No peace. We're going to continually attack. We're going to continually be against Israel and bring in war. No recognition. We will never recognize them as a nation, as a state, or being viable in this area and having their own nation. And no negotiations with Israel. We're not into negotiating anything for any kind of land. We want them annihilated. That's what Israel's dealing with. This isn't a two-state issue. And that was the third time they put it down. Then in the year 2000, Prime Minister Barak from Israel got with Yasser Arafat with Bill Clinton. They offered Israel through Yasser Arafat, or Israel offered to the Palestinian nation now, and the PLO offered them the two-state solution, plus 94% of the West Bank back. Not only just Gaza, but 94% of the West Bank, and they were going to let the east portion of Jerusalem be their capital. Offered it to them on a platter. They turned it down. Said, no, we don't want that. Instead, what they started doing, and it really came in with Arafat, is this terrorist movement. This is when you started hearing in years past, and it still happens today, where you heard of the terrorist attacks, and you get people with backpacks and everything getting on buses and going to weddings and blowing people up at Jewish weddings and going into restaurants and pizza parlors, setting off bombs and taking out as many as they could, killing, over several amount of time. There's over 1,000 Israelis killed then. Because it isn't about a two-state solution. That's driven by the media. They don't want that. What they want is Israel dead. They want every Jew on this planet dead. You know what else they want? Every Christian dead. Yeah. Show you in a little bit. Now, that's the fourth time they said, no, we don't want a two-state solution. Then in 2005, Ariel Sharon ordered Israel and all of its people to leave Gaza. There should be one up there that says it's labeled Gaza. It has the word Gaza in it. Just to point this out a little bit, you see there on the left, see Gaza, that little bitty strip? You see the word Israel, then to your left, you see Beersheba, and then you see Gaza. That little strip right there, that's Gaza. That was actually, in the Old Testament, that was the Philistines. That was where the Philistines were. Philistines, the Palestinians do not derive their name, Palestinians, from the Philistines. The Philistines were wiped out. That wasn't their heritage. But in 2005, Ariel Sharon, not that he was ordered to do, but he told the Jewish nation, all the people had to leave Gaza. And guess what they did? They left the control of Gaza to the Palestinian people. And it's been that way since. There is no occupation in Gaza. They see it as everything is ours. They don't want Israel to have a home. But Israel backed out, contrary to what the media will tell you. Gaza is not an occupied territory. Ariel Sharon pulled all of Israel out of the Gaza Strip and said it's yours. Do you know who funds the Palestinian people? I don't mean the Hamas. That's debatable, but that would be behind closed doors type stuff. But do you know who gives the Palestinians their funding? The United States and Israel. The very people they want to annihilate off this planet is one of the biggest supporters through financial aid to the Palestinian people. Media ever tell you that? No. You don't hear that. Who supplies them their electricity? Yeah, right now it's used against them in the sense of it's cut off. They supply their electricity. They give them water. They give them everything they need for life. But it isn't good enough. There is no two-state solution. And so that was in 2005. Then in 2008, Prime Minister Olmert tried the same plan to give them the same two-state solution as Prime Minister Barak did. Even offered him more land to the Palestinians. But instead, they ratcheted up the terrorist attacks against Israel. Folks, I'm telling you, this war has absolutely nothing to do with a two-state solution. 5 times through history, the Palestinians were given the opportunity to have a two-state solution, and they didn't want it. They didn't want it because all they want is Israel dead. They don't want them to have a home. There's a thing called the Hamas Charter. You can look it up. In Article 13 of the Hamas Charter, it says this: there is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. This is their constitution, basically. This is their plan, Hamas. This is their plan of what they're going to carry out and how they plan to achieve their existence. Except through jihad, initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are all a waste of time and vain endeavors. Right in their compact, right in their little constitution, whatever they want to call it, they plainly say, we don't want to negotiate. We don't care about a two-state solution. This is about jihad. This is about a holy war. This is about us killing every Jew that we can. One of the Hamas leaders, Mahmoud al-Zahra, listen to what he said. This was in 2022. The entire planet will be under our law. There will be no more Jews or Christian traitors. The entire 510 million square kilometers of planet Earth will come under a system where there is no injustice, no oppression, no Zionism, no treacherous Christianity. How do you negotiate with that? How do you negotiate with that mentality? Folks, this isn't about a two-state solution. That is what they want you to believe through the media, through the horrific pictures, and through all of the devastation. They educate from an early age to indoctrinate their children with hate. Hate of the Jew, hate of the Christian. It's in their curriculum. Let me give you an excerpt from, once again, their Hamas Charter. This is out of Article 15. You can look all this stuff up. It is necessary to instill the spirit of jihad in the heart of the nation so that they would confront the enemies, who's that? The Jews, the Christians, and join the ranks of the fighters. It is necessary that scientists, educators, and teachers, information and media people, as well as the educated masses, especially the youth and sheiks of the Islamic movements, should take part in the operation of awakening the masses. It is important that basic changes be made in the school curriculum to cleanse it of the traces of ideological invasion that affected it as a result of the Orientalists and missionaries who infiltrated the region, following the defeat of the Crusaders at the hands of Salah al-Din. It is in their compact, it is in their charter to indoctrinate their children with hate. From the time they are 3 to 5 years old, it begins. It begins. Because it isn't about a two-state solution. It is about totally destroying and killing every Jew on this planet and every Christian on this planet. And then we have fools celebrating in the streets, protesting in the streets of America, supporting this garbage, not understanding what this is truly about on the underside, not understanding they've been indoctrinated into an evil plot and plan that is straight out of the pit of hell. They continue to talk about this Palestinian state and run it through the media, but all they care about is death and destruction. There has never been a state of Palestine. There has never been a Palestinian state. Let me give you a rundown. First, it's Abraham and his family, the Hebrew ancestry, the Jewish people. They migrated from Mesopotamia into the land of Canaan that God promised them. And I'll show you a map of that in just a minute. Then there's the confederation, right, of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then the kingdom of Israel, and there's the kingdom of Judah. Then there's the Babylonian Empire, Persian Empire, Empire of Alexander the Great, the Hellenistic Empire, the Jewish Harmonian dynasty. Then came the Roman Empire. Now, what you don't know is that area of Gaza, an area and through there where they called it Palestine, that was actually named from the Greeks. And then the Romans took that name and gave it to the area. And it kind of stuck, kind of didn't stick, but they were doing that to wipe out all really, how can I say it, of the Jews having their place. That's how Palestine actually got its name. Then comes the Byzantine Empire, and then the Nero Persian Empire, and then the Byzantine again. Then there's the Fatimid empires, the Frankish and Christian kingdom of Jerusalem. Some of these names get kind of wild here. Ayyubid dynasty, Malik Sultanate, and then the Ottoman Empire I talked about earlier. And then the British come on, and they started using the term Palestine again for that region and that area. I didn't pull these off. Maybe I'll get them next week just so you can see. But did you know originally, now they weren't called Palestinians until the 50s and 60s, but this whole region of Palestine, even the Jews were recognized as being of Palestine. Their paper, I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to find that. It was interesting. I didn't realize this when I was researching all this. Their paper, that the name of it now originally was the Palestine paper of the community and of the area. Because originally, it was just a region. It was just all called that. And then there was that rebirth of Israel. That was when the Jews then began to come home and come back. So why is all this going on? Why is there so much problem? Why is there so much turmoil? Genesis 25:23 tells us this. And the Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son. That's the story between Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau. This split, this whole problem. Esau goes, and that's where you get the Edomites, Arab nations. And you get all this conflict, you get all this trouble and all this problem. This is foretold back in Genesis. All the way back. That there was going to be this division and this problem because this is about religion. This isn't about a two-state issue. That is where the division came from. Not only that, there was another time before this. Ishmael, one of Abraham's sons. He actually was kind of in the lineage and the father of the Arab nations. Ishmael was. So, you see all of this different things going on, and his mother was Hagar, you remember? And Hagar and Ishmael were put away because that wasn't the chosen son, so to speak. And all this division, all this problem is coming through the lineage. It's coming through the whole plan of God and the whole thing and the structure of everything that is happening. And God foretold about all this division that was going to happen. Give me, trying to remember some of the names. There should be a map of Abraham's promise. You see this? Now, if anyone has been cheated, If anyone has been cheated out of land, you see that red line going around there? That was the land that was promised to Abraham and his descendants. That was what God promised in land to Abraham and his descendants, the Jewish nation, the Hebrew people. Now, if you look, you see the big word there in the middle, it says Israel. Okay, Israel borders, it's just the name of that. Look straight to the left. See that little gray sliver right there? That's Israel today. That's how much land they actually have out of all of the land that God promised to them. So, who lost land? Israel has lost land. All through the years and all through the centuries of all the wars and everything going on, they slowly got it whittled away. There should be another one up there about Solomon's. This was the most land during Solomon's reign that they actually occupied of that. The green there, as you see the difference there, see how it went all the way up to the top? This was Solomon's kingdom. Then you see over to the left of what's left. Because they kept losing ground. They kept losing ground. Why did they lose ground? Because of their disobedience to God. Because they turned their back on God. They caused this themselves. They began to worship pagan gods. They began to intermarry into pagan systems. They began to turn from God and idol worship and everything else. And it cost them, and it cost them dearly. But the one with the red lines up there, that whole area was the promise to Abraham of what originally was given to Israel. Much, much more than what they're dealing with today. In Ezekiel, I'm about finished up for today here. In Ezekiel 25, these are some of the prophecies. This is the prophecy against Edom, the Edomites. 25:12 through 14. It says, "This is what the sovereign Lord says. The people of Edom have sinned greatly by avenging themselves against the people of Judah." Okay, you had a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom here. This is the kingdom of Judah. "Therefore, says the sovereign Lord, I will raise my first judgment against Edom. I will wipe out its people and animals with the sword. I will make a wasteland of everything from Teman to Dedan. I will accomplish this by the hand of my people of Israel. They will carry out my vengeance with anger, and Edom will know that the vengeance is from me. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken." What I'm pointing out to you is God stands with Israel. Every one of these nations, every one of these peoples, every one of these terrorist groups, yes, you may inflict pain. Yes, you may inflict problems and issues and things that they're going to have to deal with, but you will not overcome God's people. You will not overcome the power and the authority and the throne of God. It will never happen. You may inflict pain for a while, but that's all it will be. And then it goes on, the prophecy against Philistia. Philistia, that is Palestine, or that's the Gaza Strip. Okay? This is where the Philistines were. This is where they lived. Okay? And this is what he's talking about. This is what the sovereign Lord says. The people of Philistia have acted against Judah out of their bitter revenge and long-standing contempt. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will raise up my fist of judgment against the land of the Philistines. I will wipe out the Kerethites and utterly destroy the people who live by the sea. I will execute terrible vengeance against them to punish them for what they have done. And when I have inflicted my revenge, they will know that I am the Lord. When you mess with God's people, you are messing with God. When you mess with Israel, you are messing with God. God, all through His Word, didn't let that stand. They've tried to wipe out at every turn the Hebrew nation, the Israelites. They've tried to wipe them out at time after time after time, and it's never happened, and it never will. He will execute vengeance on those that come against Israel in that way. Now, does that mean Israel has done everything right through their whole time frame here on earth? No. No one has. They've made poor decisions too. That's why you saw how much the land they've lost, is because of their actions. Look at, and I don't have too much more, Zephaniah 2. Listen to this. Another prophecy here. Seek the Lord, all you humble of the land who do his just command. Seek righteousness. Seek humility. Perhaps you may be hidden on the day of the anger of the Lord. For Gaza shall be deserted, and Ashkelon shall become a desolation. Ashdod's people shall be driven out at noon, and Ekron shall be uprooted. There's a map up there, that one that first you started to show me a minute ago, that one. I'll have to look at this. You guys aren't going to be able to read that. Let me look at mine. That bottom part of the blue, that's Edom. That's where they're talking about Edom. Just north of there, to the left in that kind of orange up there, that's the kingdom of Judah. You see that? There's the Moabites. Up there in the top is Ammon, the Ammonites, and all of those come in and attack. And that's this area of Scripture of what's going on here. Just to give you that idea of where we're at. He says, woe to you inhabitants of the seacoast, you nation of the Cherethites. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines. This is that Gaza area. And I will destroy you until no inhabitant is left. That happened to the Philistines. And you, O seacoast, shall be pastures, with meadows for shepherds and folds for flocks. The seacoast shall become the possession of the remnant of the house of Judah. This area, this is Gaza. It says, and you, O seacoast, shall be pastures with meadows and shepherds and folds for flocks. The seacoast shall become the possession of the remnant of the house of Judah, on which they shall graze, and the house of Ashkelon they shall lie down at evening. For the Lord their God will be mindful of them and restore their fortunes. I have heard the taunts of Moab and the revelings of the Ammonites, how they have taunted my people and made boasts against their territory. Therefore, as I live, declares the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Moab shall become like Sodom, and Ammonites like Gomorrah, and the land possessed by the nettles and the salt pits and the waste forever. The remnant of my people shall plunder them, and the survivors of my nation shall possess them. If there's occupied territory, Israel isn't the ones doing the occupying. All of this area was promised by God to Israel. This goes all the way back. You listen to the Palestinians, they go, we've been suppressed for the last 75 years. Folks, we're going back thousands of years. That God promised this very land they think is theirs. They promised it. He promised it to the Jewish nation. Psalms 105, 7 through 11. Listen. This is powerful. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. Who's supreme? God is. He remembers his covenant forever. The word that he commanded for 1,000 generations. That covenant to Abraham of giving the land and everything. He's saying, I remember that covenant forever. It doesn't end just because the world says it ends. It doesn't end because of political aspirations of different nations. It doesn't end because my people mess up. Yes, they may lose land. Yes, they may have issues and may have problems all through life, but my covenant still stands strong. My promise still stands strong. And he goes on, the covenant that he made with Abraham, his sworn promise to Isaac, which is confirmed to Jacob as a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as your portion for an inheritance. It has never ended. That land is Israel's. I don't care what the media tells you. I don't care what all the ones protesting in the streets tell you. I don't care if they believe the Bible. I don't care if they believe in God. It doesn't matter. What they believe and what they think does not trump the Word of God. It does not trump God. God stands on His covenant. He is telling us through this passage in Psalms that His covenant is everlasting, that it's remembered by God forever, and He says it endures for 1,000 generations. He's not telling you that it's just for 1,000 generations. It's no different than when He says, well, hey, when you're to forgive somebody, well, how do we forgive them? Well, you're supposed to forgive them 7 times 70. Oh, so I only forgive somebody 490? No, what He's telling you is the number is beyond anything you can calculate. The number, it isn't about a number. It's about, no, this is something that you just do. And so He's saying, this isn't something that ends. I'm just giving you the idea and the understanding. These people back then couldn't have thought 1,000 generations ahead. But He's telling them, this stands forever. It endures forever. It is your inheritance. It is a promise that will remain throughout all time. Last scriptures, Psalms 121:4 through 121:8. For all of us, but definitely for Israel. Behold, who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. God is not asleep at the wheel, ladies and gentlemen. God sees everything. He understands everything. He is here through everything, even through what Israel may have to endure. God is there. God is still their protector. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Ladies and gentlemen, fear not. God is on the throne. God is in control. There isn't anything going on that hasn't already went across the desk of Jesus. Next week, I'll talk a little bit about Ezekiel 38 and what all this could be leading up to. Not saying that it is, but I'm telling you, it's preparatory for what's to come. In Ezekiel 38, just to give you a little bit of hint, is where it's talking about the prophecy of the end of times and all these things and in His vision. But one of the reasons that you know that this isn't it, but it could be leading to it, is because Israel comes against nations. Right now, they're just coming against a terrorist group, not a nation. So there's a little bit of a separation. Now where I'm talking about how this could come together, it could lead to that. Of a coming, nations against coming. In Ezekiel 38, and you read through those passages, guess what? There will come a time where no nation will stand with Israel. No nation. But the amazing part about it is, God shows up and He fights the battle for Israel. And He puts those nations, this is all the battle with Gog and Magog and all that kind of stuff. And He puts it down. Because it won't be in man's strength, it's going to be in God's strength. Because He's going to demonstrate that He is who He says He is. He is the great I am of the I am. And everyone will know it. So we'll talk a little bit about that next week. Are we in a preparatory phase for what's to come? How close are we? But when you look at everything from top to bottom, it's very close. We have to get serious about salvation. We have to get serious about God's plan. We have to get serious in our homes. We have to get serious in this nation. We have to get serious with our children. It just, my heart is just, because I see such a lackadaisical approach to life all across this world. But it shouldn't surprise us, because he says it'll be as in the days of Noah. They were eating, drinking, marrying. What he's saying is they were just doing life like they always do life, not a care in the world. They weren't worried about me. Folks, we have to wake up. We have to wake up.